Story of my life. Yeah, it was deliberate. So, hey guys, my name's Al, and I'm a recovered drug addict. And so as a result of Cocaine Anonymous, I've been fortunate enough to sit in this home group and do a lot of sobriety birthday shares as the years have went on. Because if you just stay in one place and keep doing this, that's kind of a consequence. And as each year has gone on, I find myself in a similar position running up to it. And I had the same tonight. What can I say that's new? What can I come up with that's not funny? What can I rely on apart from fucking Wobbly Bob's Widowmaker and The Great Escape on a penny whistle? What can I say different? And the truth is, there isn't anything different. There really, really isn't anything different. And I think that me and Michelle were talking about it. That's the consequence of being part of a home group where I've been able to be myself for years, where I've been able to be honest for years, and where I've been able to tell the truth about me for years and not make up stuff to have you think the way I think you want to think about me because I'm thinking about what you're thinking, I'm thinking, you'll be thinking. And I just don't have the energy, time, inclination or need to do that anymore. So my story is my story. What I do know as an absolute bona fide fact is long-term sustained recovery is possible in Cocaine Anonymous, in my experience. Now that doesn't mean it's everyone's journey. And in many ways, thank God it's not everyone's journey. I've said it many times, we have a spanner to fit every nut that walks through the door. Some people will come through the door and they won't identify with someone who has just come into recovery and stayed. They'll identify with the person who relapsed in and out, and it's the person who relapsed in and out that will have the potential to carry the message that will save that person's life. But my experience is by far the easier, softer option is just to stay. And the way that I found to stay was I found a sponsor who cared enough about me to be honest with me. I did what he said partially, and I paid the consequences for the bits that I didn't listen to. And I've stayed, and I've worked and reworked the steps, and I've stayed active in service, and I've stayed as part of a home group where I've been able to be myself, good and bad. And some of you know, some of my behaviour in this home group over the years has been fucking shocking. Just really not fucking cool. And I've never been turned away, and I've never had the door shut in my face, and I've never been told to fuck off, at least to my face. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that and for Cocaine Anonymous. Because what you guys gave me was a program and a pathway to the power I needed to save my life. What you guys gave me was the patience, love and tolerance to find my pathway to the power that saved and continues to save my life. So my story, I don't come from this neck of the woods. Originally, I come from a place called Wallsend, which is just outside Newcastle. So it's a shipbuilding town. My dad, my granddad, they were coal miners. It was a typical northeast Geordie family, hard drinkers. That was my early childhood. And a few years in, somebody come along and closed all the mines, closed all the shipyards, and absolutely fucked the place. It just ruined communities and thousands of people. And my family moved down south. So I come down here. By the time I come down here, I had a really, really strong Geordie accent, and I stuck out like a thumb, and I really felt it. And I really wanted to be part of, and I really wanted to fit in. And I felt like I would do anything to do that. But it seemed that no matter what I did, I didn't fit in. I just never felt, always felt like a square peg in a round hole until I had a drink. And it was pretty early on, still remember it as if it was yesterday, Christmas time, 8 years old, Wizard of Oz on the telly. I drank some sherry and passed out. And when I woke up, Wizard of Oz was still on the telly, but it was no longer in black and white. It had gone into colour. And it was a profound moment for me. I didn't know the film did that. I didn't know. This experience. And at that age, I understood that I had found something that fixed something I had no idea I was suffering from, no idea, I couldn't put a name to it, I didn't know, I just knew that with this drink in me. And I felt horrible. I felt sick. I had a headache. Physically, I felt absolutely shit. But I knew. And I was 8. I was 8 years old. I don't believe now that is normal thinking for an 8-year-old. So my journey was, I pursued that in various guises for years. For the most part, woefully unsuccessful. For the most part, really nasty rough cider, the kind of pant pissing stuff. When I started taking substances, it was crap, flat press to start with, and shitty bits of fucking pollen that just rubbish. High-end drinking for me was once in a great while I would come across a bottle of Concord wine and I really thought I'd arrived. That was top end. I knew nothing. When you guys told me about things like champagne, never drank it in my life. When you guys told me about cocaine, I don't think I ever took cocaine in my life. Not proper cocaine. The stuff you lot talk about, you might all be fucking liars, I don't know, but that wasn't my experience. But what I did discover is that if I went to a doctor and told him a set of things, he would give me things that made me feel better. And that was my journey from years of drinking pretty unsuccessfully into substances. And I remember very, very well going to a doctor and saying, I'm so in trouble. I've started using heroin. I can't get off it. I don't know what. I've never done heroin in my life. Knew nothing about it. Somebody I'd worked with he hadn't given me fuck all. Had sold me 10 mil of methadone, and I liked that and said, "How'd you get it?" And I walked away from there with an 80 mil a day script on monthly pickup. So I had these big kegs of methadone, and I had a period of about 6 months where it was great. That was it for me. I swear that was the pinnacle of my using. That was as good as it got. 6 months of methadone, that was getting me off my head. Absolutely. Just fucking hell. And all the rest was misery. And all the rest was struggling. And all the rest was living off bacon and fucking razor blades and toothbrushes and whatever I could steal to get a skanky bag, to do a spoon wash, to be up all night rattling, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, for years. See, my thing, I didn't use because I liked the effect produced, because the effect produced was shit for me for most of the time. I was just really unsuccessful at it. I kept using because I absolutely could not stop. Could not stop, no matter what. Whether it's family that left me. I mean, you guys know my long-suffering wife over in the corner there. She's very quiet and timid, and you'd hardly know she's about, but long-suffering she is. But she's my second go. My first wife, we've been divorced for years, for decades. She still will not speak to me, will not even acknowledge I exist. Such was the damage that I caused. Such was my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my inability to prioritize anything in front of using. And I can't even justify it or try and justify it by saying the using was great and there was loads of coke and loads of this and loads of that, because it was constantly shit. And that's it. That was the reality for me. And I ended up in a situation where I went to jail. I bounced in and out of jail many times. I'd never heard anything about any of this. I knew nothing about any of this. I didn't know what public information was. I hadn't heard about it on the outside. I hadn't heard about it in doctors. And I'd been bouncing in and out of methadone clinics for years and years. I knew nothing about fellowship. Now, I think it was probably there, but my eyes just weren't open to it. And I ended up going in jail on a longer than usual sentence. I got myself into trouble, and it was a parole thing. And they said, if you get involved in recovery, you'll probably get your parole, or you might get your parole. And I can remember that decision to become this recovery giant, to study the big book, to be able to talk about the steps and the traditions like that, to talk a good game, not because I wanted recovery, not because I wanted God in my life, not because I wanted a solution to a problem I couldn't understand, simply because I wanted to get out of jail quicker and use. That was it. And I've said it so many times, you bunch of fuckers, you just wound me in and I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. Because for the first time, and as long as I could remember, I got into a situation where people started saying, just stay with us. They stopped dipping their heads and backing away. They stopped encouraging me to leave as quickly as possible. And they started looking me in the eye, talking to me, smiling at me and saying, stay. And it absolutely changed my life. There was one particular guy, I'm still in contact with him now. He gets in touch with me once a year on my sobriety birthday without fail. And he was an AA guy. That was in this particular jail I was in, there was no CA in there at that time, although we've been in and out of there a couple of times since. We're not in there at the moment. But he used to trudge up there every week and do this meeting, do this AA meeting. And a lot of the time it was literally me and him. That was it. And we'd sit with a big book. And if he could bring someone in to share, he would. And if he couldn't, he would just read a story out the back of the big book. And we just did that. And it changed my life without me understanding what was going on, without me doing much more than just turning up and opening myself up to the process. Without hardly any willingness. We talk about willingness being so key, and if you're coming through that door and you haven't got the right motive, it won't work, and if your drives are your children instead of this, what a load of fucking bollocks in my experience. See, it didn't matter. It made no difference what brought me here. What made a difference were the people that kept me here once I got here. And that's where the power initially to hook me in came from the fellowship. So I went through went through jail. They give me parole, come out, went into treatment, and just ended up in Bournemouth because the owner of the treatment centre in Bournemouth was supervising the counsellors where I was. It all seemed really random at the time. I absolutely don't believe that now. I absolutely believe with all my heart God was involved in it. And I came here and I went through the treatment process loosely, I will say. If nobody in here is in treatment at the moment, are they? No? Good. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're in treatment, stay in treatment. It's a great place to be. But my experience, I found my wife. They told me if you're looking for a woman, I've said it so many times, if you're looking for a woman, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. And I met my wife, and we've been married many years. But despite that, Cocaine Anonymous stepped in and saved me again. There's a great friend of ours, lives over in Thailand. We're going to see him again in a few weeks soon. Me and him would sit in the shed at the bottom of the garden there, talking about traditions, talking about steps, doing step work, getting involved in this, getting a home group, being part of that home group. My home group, before this group started, was the Tuesday night Big Book audio. So I got involved in a home group that was a Big Book study where I was learning about the fellowship, learning about service, absolutely off the wall, doing service here and here and here, and I'm at district doing this, and I'm at my home group doing that, and I'm at area doing that, and I'm in H&I doing that, and people would say, just have one commitment at a time, and I'd say, fuck off, and because it's what I could do, and it was absolutely fundamental in my recovery, because that's what worked and fitted for me at the time. Got myself sponsored. We worked through the steps. I've always been sponsored. That first sponsor was in AA. I had one foot in AA, one foot in CA for a while, and it got confusing because I found myself sharing in AA meetings wanting to carry the message of Cocaine Anonymous. And that's not right. That's not what it's about. And I found myself in CA meetings wanting to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's not right. That's not what it's about. So I made a decision, moved on from my first sponsor to someone in CA, and I've always been sponsored. For me, because this is what works, I've always been sponsored in CA and serve in CA and have a home group in CA. And the consequence of that is life got great at times, but not all the time. There were some times when it just wasn't. It's not reasonable to be able to expect to have 22 years of your life in recovery and not have some misery, and not have some sadness, and not have some loss. And early on, I didn't really hear that. And early on, I didn't need to hear that, if I'm honest. But as time went on, I did. And I needed to understand that in here, well, this is great. And come in here for an hour, a couple of hours on a Thursday night, sunshine and happiness, backflips for the baby Jesus all night long. Lovely, safe, protected, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But the real world isn't always like that. And curveballs come along. But I've never had to throw it all away to go and drink. I've never had to throw it all away to go and use. And there have been times, as you guys know, I had a bump on a bike a few years ago, and you know, when you get hurt medically, their pain relief is the kind of pain relief I like, you know, and they give you a button that puts morphine straight into you. I get trigger happy as fuck. And what happened was, it was before COVID, so the likes of Zoom and all didn't even exist, but variations did. And what you guys did is you set up a link to the meeting for me. And I'm in hospital in Southampton, absolutely bedridden and fucked, and the meeting's still with me. My sponsor came and seen me. My friends came and seen me. I was never left on my own. I was never left to rot, and I was never just left. Cocaine Anonymous stepped in again. And Cocaine Anonymous has done that consistently for me in every area of my life for the last 22 years. What I do now and what I've learned now is, so I'm a huge fan of the Big Book. I'm very familiar with it, and I've studied it, and for me, that's the pointer, that's the direction, that's the instructions to get to the power that saved my life. I'm a real Big Book thumper, and you know, we write some other literature, a bit of a step working guide. I think it's shit. We write our stories. I think they're shit. We write up. I think they're shit. I'm like that. I'm wired like that because I'm real big on the Big Book. But what's happened as a result of Cocaine Anonymous, as a result of the learning process for me, I've been able over the years to open my eyes a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, to have a bit more consideration to other things that work for other people. AA have just recently done a new edition, if you like, of the Big Book, the plain language of the Big Book. If that had been presented to me 10 years ago, I would have seen it as satanic and like blasphemous and for the love of God, no. But I'm reading it, I'm looking at it, and do you know what? It's fucking great. It really, it's AA approved. It's not like Dave hasn't written it in his shed, in his view of it. You know, it's got a little bit of thing behind it. But the point is that my biggest danger now, I talk about it sometimes. There was an old bedwetter, he died a few years ago, called Mark Houston, and he used to talk about falling asleep spiritually and dreaming you're awake. Now, my experience as sobriety has gone on is the risk of that gets more and more, because people will go, you're 2 years, you're fine. You're 5 years, you're great. You're 10 years, you're brilliant. You're 15 years, you can't possibly have a problem. And it's so easy to buy into that. So what my job and my business becomes is a constant process of staying open to what you guys are saying, staying open to what Cocaine Anonymous has said and done for me consistently over the last 22 years. And that's why I sit here. Relatively sane-ish, definitely sober, and moderately serene depending on the day and the time of day. I'm so grateful for Cocaine Anonymous. I'm so grateful for you guys in here and for your tolerance and for the fact that you still, despite what would appear my best efforts over the years, you still haven't fucking kicked me out yet. I gotta tell you, it means the world. Recovery's possible. If somebody says keep coming back, tell them to fuck off and just stay with us, please. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Al.